Hey everybody, it's DrJ here. I wanted to take the opportunity to talk about something that happened in the news, the plane crash in Austin where the guy drove his plane into the 7-story building in Austin that housed the IRS and the CIA offices. Just to use some of the psychobabble, if you will, from chapter 1 and apply it and let you kind of see how maybe a psychologist might use the terminology and use those lenses to look at that situation. So I will put a link to a news clip. It's about a 7-minute clip on what happened if you haven't heard the news, to kind of bring you up to speed as to what happened. Basically it's a suicide mission that this is a disgruntled software engineer who was mad at the world. He had lots of rage and aggression towards the government for lots of different reasons, and basically he put a 7-page suicide manifesto out on the internet, set his house on fire, and flew his plane into the building in Austin. So they're not calling it a terrorism attack because he acted alone and he wasn't a member of an anti-government group or whatever. But to keep focused on how we're using this in psychology, it was February 18th, 2010. It was a small plane crashed into the IRS CIA building in Austin. The pilot was a disgruntled software engineer programmer. I'm not sure which one. He set his home on fire and then went on this suicide mission. Okay, 7-page suicide manifesto somewhere on the internet. I'm sure you can pick it up, but apparently he was angry for reasons of in the past he has gone through a divorce. He struggled with his own personal business, and I guess he was not successful there. He was frustrated because the government had bailed out big business but left him to struggle. The .com bust, apparently he was involved in that and probably wasn't successful. 9/11, that was traumatic for all of us. He was angry at the overall system. He felt like a victim. He was angry at his church. He was angry at capitalism. And so all of these elements of what this one individual was feeling is not being coped well. He's got elements of aggression, he's got elements of rage, major stress, and obviously emotionally unstable. His choice was to use a temporary solution to a permanent problem. These problems may not seem temporary because they're financial and they are heavy. I've known a lot of people who have lost a lot of money over the last couple years. Overall, the U.S. is hurting in many ways. However, you have to be optimistic and believe in who we are as a people, who we are, and what we can do with our minds, and how we can use this to leverage and overcome this and come out stronger. So all of that being said, there are 3 forces that we talked about in chapter 1. Well, I guess we really didn't get to talk about them too much. But in chapter 1, you read about and studied about, first, the psychodynamic approach. This was Freud, and he talked about a lot of unconscious sexual and aggressive drives that motivate our behavior. The second one was behaviorism. This was Watson and those guys, and they believe that you basically can train anyone to do anything, and your behavior is a result of the way you've been trained and how you've been taught to react to situations. And then finally, the third force they talk about in chapter 1 is the humanistic, and they believe that behavior is determined by your environment and what those things bring to the table. So a person from the psychodynamic perspective, they're gonna, and this is something that I used a lot in my counseling and therapeutic days, and they say the longest distance for people is from their head to their heart, because the head represents reason and logic, your heart represents emotion and love, And if you listen to people, they will tell you a lot about themselves. They will say, well, I think this, I think that, I think this, I think that. Other people, when you ask them questions, will say, well, I feel this way, I feel that way, I feel... And sometimes you say, no, I don't care how you feel about it. What do you think about it? Because sometimes those are two very different things. And people can be not in touch with either the head or the heart. And so they say that that can be the longest distance in trying to integrate those two pieces and parts of our personality. So what I would say is definitely this guy had a lot of, well, he had a lot of conscious aggression and rage, but I'm sure there was probably additional layers of it that he probably wasn't even aware of. So I'm sure that was a piece and a part of the puzzle happening there from the psychodynamic perspective. The behavioralist, I would say he was not taught ways to cope with stress and cope with failure, and able to so-called pick himself up by his bootstraps and move on. So these are serious issues that a lot of people have had, and how you react to a situation is what defines you. All of us, the more we try to accomplish, the probability is we're going to have more failures. And I'm here to tell you, I've had more failures than successes. Someone from the outside looking in will say, oh, well, you've had a very great and wonderful and successful life. Well, yeah, I've had some successes, but they don't know about all the failures I've had too, because I've tried a lot of things and you know, succeeded in a number of them, however failed in a number of them as well. So how you deal with that. And on that note, John Maxwell has a book called Failing Forward. Check it out. It's a pretty good way. It's a pretty good read. It talks about how it's what you do with that information, whether you fail or succeed. What you do with that information and how you leverage it and move forward is critical to your future and success. Humanistic behavior determined by the environment. Lots of things going on here, and honestly, I've been concerned for a lot of different people for these kinds of things, that you know, you get to a breaking point, whatever that is, and however you respond to it. So the humanist would say, you know, the environment determined his behavior, and they would, I don't want to say not take as much responsibility for it, but typically, in my experience, the humanists have been maybe the group that dismisses things and attributes it to environmental reasons of why things happen. But nevertheless, I just wanted to take this opportunity to maybe put that lens on it. I think I'm running out of time here, so shoot me an email if you have any thoughts about this, or we can do a discussion board forum, because I think it's a very relative topic that I don't know, maybe you can see how the analysis coming from the psychological perspective is worth taking a look at. And over time, as you analyze different situations, you can see which perspective you might come from. We'll get into my perspective and which one I subscribe to in time. So anyway, send me an email. Let me know what you think. You guys are doing well. See you later. Dr. J.